The following is a chapter from The Secret Lives of Color, of which I have been granted permission to read out on this channel. This video is not sponsored, I just found this book one day and I really like it. After this, I will be attempting to make the color from the chapter by using, in part, the recipe that is described. In the opening pages of the Gladsour Gospels, the text is pressed beneath a heavily gilded pediment decorated with a portrait of a tonsured saint. Surrounding him is an explosion of colorful, curly-cued foliage filled with fantastical creatures. A pair of blue crane-like creatures with red and green wings face each other, beaks open in silent screeches. Over the page are a startled peacock and 4 birds that resemble lilac partridges, each with a heart-shaped red leaf clasped in its beak. Some pages are so choked with gilded greenery and bizarre peeping figures that it seems as if the words were an afterthought. Prior to Johannes Gutenberg's invention of printing with movable type sometime around 1440, books were restricted to noblemen, clergy, and a few others, such as clerks, who needed to be literate in order to do their jobs. They were also expensive. Manuscripts were created by hand. In Latin, manu means hand, while scriptus means written, and were usually commissioned by a powerful patron to reflect his or her piety and status. Each book represented hundreds of hours of labor and was wholly unique, from the animal skins that made up the leaves of parchment, to the pigments used for the illuminations, to the fists of the scribes. The Gladsour Gospels were created during the 14th century in a small region in central Armenia, halfway between the Black and Caspian Seas. Then, as now, Armenia was caught both politically and culturally between the East and the West, the Muslim world and the Christian one. Under the aptly named Gregory the Illuminator, it had been the first country in the world to convert to Christianity in 301 AD. Perhaps it was pride in this fact, coupled with anxiety over the Mongol occupation, that led those who worked on the Gladsour Gospels to pour so much frenzied creativity into the manuscript and its illustrations. As in most monastic endeavors, the production of this manuscript required a precise division of labor. First, scribes would have copied the text, carefully leaving space for the paintings, and then a team of artists would have begun their work. If the team that worked on the volume was large enough, it would have been the sole responsibility of one person to add the capitals, headings, and pilcrows in a particular shade of orange-red so bright that they leapt off the page. The pigment used was Minium. The person who worked with it was called a miniator, and his work, an eye-catching symbol or heading in a manuscript, was called a miniatura. This is the origin of the word miniature, which in its original sense did not mean small at all. Minium was used extensively in manuscript illumination during the Middle Ages, and use of it only gradually died out as vermilion became more readily available from the 11th century. Although minium, or lead tetroxide, can be found in naturally occurring deposits, this is rare, and it has more commonly been manufactured. The process is essentially a continuation of the one used to make lead white, and was described, in a pleasingly magical way, in the 11th century Mappae Clavicula. Take a pot that has never been used, and put sheets of lead in it. Fill the pot with very strong vinegar, cover and seal it. Put the pot in a warm place, and leave it for a month. Next, shake out the deposits around the sheets of lead into a ceramic pot, and then place it on the fire. Stir the pigment constantly, and when you see it turn white as snow, use as much of it as you like. This pigment is called basic lead white, or ceruse. Then take whatever is left on the fire and stir it constantly until it becomes red. Minium was often used as a cheap alternative to vermilion and cinnabar. In fact, the 3 pigments were often confused, even though minium is generally much yellower than either. Pliny the Elder described it as flame-colored. Perhaps the confusion was in part due to wishful thinking. Although it is cheap, bright, and easy to make, minium is far from an ideal pigment. Even though, like its near relation lead white, it was used as a cosmetic in ancient Greece and China, it is just as poisonous. Another major problem is that it does not mix well with others, including the near ubiquitous lead white, and has, George Field reported in 1835, a tendency to turn black in impure air. Luckily for historians, the Armenian air proved equal to the challenge. While the stone walls of the Gladsour monastery have long since disappeared, the minium in this particular manuscript is as illuminating as ever. In order to make Minium, lead oxide, or red lead, I first had to make lead white. To do this, I simply followed the Dutch stack method, used by the YouTuber Samuel Hoskins. His video is basically a more detailed explanation of how lead white was obtained in the recipe in the book. Keep in mind, don't try this at home. Lead is toxic, and I always use gloves, safety glasses, and a mask when working with it. And I always use tools and materials that I know I will never use for anything else than dealing with lead. And even then, I don't know for sure these are all the proper safety measures I could have taken. I first bought a plastic bin, filled it halfway with fresh horse manure which I obtained from a local ranch. Then I got 2 glass jars, put small plastic cups, which I cut the tops off of, at the bottom of both of them, and filled the cups halfway with cleaning vinegar. Then I bought lead fishing weights off Amazon, unrolled them, and set them on top of the cups, not dipped into the vinegar. Then I put those containers within containers in the manure, shut the lid, put it in an outside shed, and waited. Within like 2 days, the vinegar and carbon dioxide from the manure reacted to produce this white layer, which I harvested. After this, I followed the recipe written in the Minium chapter and left this alone for a month, which was a mistake, because when I came back, the lead had basically disintegrated into the vinegar cups. Thankfully, all I had to do was drain the vinegar, let the rest evaporate in the sun, and then start cooking it. This would prove to be the most difficult step, because I couldn't find a YouTube tutorial for it like for the lead white, so there was a lot of guesswork when I should have just done more research. I roasted the ground up white lead on a portable stove, and when it turned kind of brownish orange, I thought I had succeeded. But this didn't really seem all that great as a pigment. I felt like I could get the same color in dirt. I tried all sorts of things, including using a blowtorch and a small campfire, and at best, all I could get was barely orange or weak yellow. I realized something was wrong. So I found this paper on making red lead, which said they cooked it for 24 hours at 470 degrees Celsius. So either I could sit by these scuffed setups for a day, or go with my brother's suggestion. So I did. This is an electric smelting machine. I set the machine to 878 degrees Fahrenheit and kept it there for about 4 hours, until I finally made a probably very impure, very coarse red lead. I knew I had succeeded when I poured out the crucible and saw a dramatically brighter, almost glowing red-orange. I mixed the powder thoroughly with some boiled linseed oil. I doubt if this is the right stuff exactly, it's typically used to seal wood. I think if I were to make a lot of this, I'd buy cold-pressed linseed oil, but it's what I have right now. So I made a little painting with it. This was made using a combination of a saint portrait and some decorative elements from the Gladsour Gospels. There it is. Minium. This was one of the simplest recipes mentioned in the excellent book, The Secret Lives of Color, which I highly recommend. And if you liked what you heard earlier in the video, this book is full of other stories on colors like that one. Now that I'm done making Minium, I'm like, that wasn't too hard. But actually, yeah, it was. Besides the smelter, nothing about this was particularly expensive, but man, the trial and error, planning, and working with dangerous substances was a little rough. I guess this is why I'm not a chemist. Despite this whole process was very rewarding, and it feels weird knowing I now own and know how to make such an ancient color. The names scrolling past are my patrons from Patreon, who help support the channel. Their funds allow me to make videos like this and more. If you want to become a patron, you also get access to behind-the-scenes material, some of my writing, early video announcements, and access to my fan Discord. Just click the link in the description below. Anyway, my name is Solar Sands, and goodbye.